Liberal outlet Slate Magazine tonight is calling for the senator to resign. Tonight, you will hear from Senator Franken's accusers. And if you are shocked or even surprised by these allegations, you shouldn't be, because Senator Franken has a long history of very vile and repulsive behavior. Now, we're going to give you information, I promise, you won't see anywhere else tonight about Senator Al Franken, including how he joked about drugging and raping women. Now, these new accusations are part of a pattern, and we have evidence tonight. We'll expose it in tonight's breaking news opening monologue. All right, in the case of Senator Al Franken, here is what we have. He admitted to some of it, and we have irrefutable photographic evidence. Let me explain. Actress, model, radio host Leanne Tweeden, who's been on this program many times, came forward today with stunning allegations against Democratic Senator Al Franken that he is now admitting to and he is now apologizing for. Now, according to Tweeden, during a 2006 USO tour in Afghanistan, then citizen Al Franken had written a skit where he kissed Tweeden, and Franken demanded that they, quote, rehearse it backstage. After Tweeden refused, she described what allegedly happens next at a press conference earlier today. Watch this.
He just put his hand on the back of my head and he mashed his face against, I mean, it happened so fast, and he just mashed his lips against my face, and he stuck his tongue in my mouth so fast. And all I can remember is that his lips were really wet and it was slimy. In my mind, I called him fish lips the rest of the trip because that's just what it reminded me of. I don't know why. And he stuck his tongue down my mouth, and I remember I pushed him off with my hands. And I just remember I almost punched him, because every time I see him now, like, my hands clench into fists, and I'm sure that's probably why. And I said, if you ever do that to me again, I'm not going to be so nice about it the second time. I was violated. I just felt like, he betrayed my trust, and obviously that is not what I wanted.
And it gets worse from there. Look at this photo. While leaving from Afghanistan, Tweeden fell asleep, and Franken proceeded, as you can see there, to grope her. Now, Tweeden says that she didn't even know what happened until after she got home and looked at pictures of this trip. Now, Tweeden further detailed the incident at a news conference earlier today. Let's take a look.
There's a photo of Al doing his, this on my breast, like looking at the camera, just kind of smirking and smiling, like, hey, look at me. He just thought he could get away with it, and that it was okay, and that it was funny. Nothing like that is ever funny. I mean, is it funny if he does that to your sister or your daughter or your wife? In context of already assaulting me backstage and all the little petty things he was doing to belittle me and how he treated me, and sort of, in succession, and then it ended with that. Look, I was afraid to speak out 11 years ago. I wanted to say something, and there were people around me who said, oh my God, you will get annihilated and you will never work in this town again. And I was afraid of that.
And this afternoon, Leanne Tweeden did an interview, and it got very emotional. Take a look.
It's not a feel-good thing. I still feel sort of embarrassed about it. You always... I don't want to be cliche, but, you talk about trying to leave the world a better place for your kids, Sorry.
Nothing to be sorry about.
I didn't think I was going to do that, but, you do. You want to leave, you try to set examples for your children, right? You want to leave the world a better place.
Now, I also interviewed Leanne Tweeden on my radio show earlier today. Listen in.
What do you think should happen? I know they were trying to pressure you in the press conference. Does something like that warrant? Does he belong in the Senate?
I'm not calling for him to step down. That's not why I came out with this. I just want other people. If there might be other girls that he did this to, and obviously you have one on the phone right now that's talking with me, and there might be others.
Al Franken did issue a statement apologizing for the photo, but claims to not remember the backstage kissing incident. It reads in part, quote, I don't know what was in my head when I took that picture, and it doesn't matter. There's no excuse. I look at it now. I feel disgusted with myself. It isn't funny. It's completely inappropriate. Now, Franken is also agreeing to a Senate ethics investigation, which Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell first called for, and then Democrats like Chuck Schumer, Claire McCaskill quickly supported because they had no choice. An ethics investigation investigation, in my mind, takes too long. And by the way, is it a delay tactic? It's also funny how some Republicans are giving Franken, well, are they giving him a pass by only calling for an investigation? Leanne Tweeden is also weighing in and saying it should go even further than that by having an outside investigation into the senator's inexcusable actions. Now, what Franken has admitted to, which we have photographic evidence right there, and what he's accused of doing is pretty downright creepy. But sadly, it's just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Al Franken, things you probably won't hear on any other show. For example, on the Senate floor in 2010, Senator Franken described his USO trips and called Leanne Tweeden beautiful. Watch this.
I was kind of the co-host with a beautiful woman named Leanne Tweeden. And we do comedy routines, and we'd introduce music, we'd introduce the cheerleaders.
Now, Franken is also being accused of harassing a second woman, Melanie Morgan, a radio TV personality, also the co-founder of the website Media Equalizer. Morgan is alleging that back in 2000, while appearing with Franken on Bill Maher's show on ABC Politically Incorrect, the two had a heated debate on camera, which then continued backstage. According to Melanie Morgan, Franken then got her phone number from one of the show's producers and called her 3 separate times, she said, harassing her until Morgan threatened to call the police. Now, I interviewed Melanie Morgan about these accusations of harassment on my radio show earlier today. Let's listen in.
Melanie, what do people to think when we don't have a picture, like in the case of Leanne? How do people sort through and get to the truth?
That is a great question, and it's one, as a journalist of over 30 years experience, I wrestle with every single day. You know, you have to take these instances and these testimonials by different women, and it's usually women, although in Hollywood, as we've learned, sometimes it's men, and you have to look at the whole context in which these allegations are made. You know, I wanted to give Judge Roy Moore the benefit of the doubt because it was 40 years ago that he was accused of doing some inappropriate things. I think that the people of Alabama are definitely going to make a judgment on what they think is true and what is not true. I can only speak as to the truth that I experienced, which was a very aggressive and almost obsessive behavior that Senator Al Franken displayed towards me when he was a writer and a performer on Politically Incorrect with Bill Maher.
Now, like in the case of Senate candidate Roy Moore, these are all very serious allegations that need to be fully investigated, in this case by the Senate Ethics Committee. And to be fair, we did reach out to Senator Franken. We did invite him on the show to tell his side of the story. You just heard part of my radio interviews with Leanne Tweeden and Melanie Morgan. Now, we also invited those that had accused Roy Moore on this program. We've also reached out to Hillary Clinton, Nancy Pelosi. So far, they didn't get back to us. No comment. Now, when it comes to Senator Al Franken, here's what you probably haven't heard. He has a long history of making all kinds of vicious, vile, completely out-of-line comments. He's also a massive hypocrite when it comes to sexual harassment. For example, in 1995, he was working on Saturday Night Live on a, quote, skit where he suggested drugging and raping Leslie Stahl from 60 Minutes. He said at the time, quote, I give the pills to Leslie Stahl, then when Leslie's passed out, I take her to the closet and rape her. And that's why you never see Leslie until February, or when she passes out, I put her in various positions and take pictures of her. What kind of person is making jokes about drugging and raping women? Then in 2000, Al Franken wrote a, quote, so-called satirical article for Playboy magazine with the headline, Pornorama. Most of it is too vulgar to read on TV, but in part, one part in particular, Franken wrote, I'm talking about the internet, which is a terrific learning tool. For example, a couple of years ago when he was 12, my son used the internet for a 6th grade report on bestiality. And in the article, Franken goes on to fantasize about a machine that would perform oral sex on him. And it gets worse. In 2008, when Franken was running for Senate, he was forced to apologize for what he wrote in Playboy and his crude and appalling comments about Leslie Stahl. But in his new book, Franken actually said that he faked those apologies in order to win votes. His own words. He writes, to say I was sorry for writing a joke was to sell out my career, to sell out who I'd been my entire life. And I wasn't sorry that I had written Pornorama or pitched that stupid Leslie Stahl joke at 2 in the morning. I was just doing my job. So I guess based on his own words from this point forward, we can only assume that any apology from Senator Grope, it will only be lies in order to win votes in the future. Examples of Franken's despicable behavior don't end there. During a Friars Club roast of Rob Reiner, Franken made jokes about infant rape. How sick do you have to be to make jokes about raping babies? Then you have Senator Franken explaining how he considered calling Republicans, quote, gay when they didn't attend a hearing on an LGBT bill. Watch this.
We had a bill called the end of the, end discrimination in Employment Non-Discrimination Act. So no Republican showed up for the hearing, which I had never seen before. I've been there for 4 or 5 months, and this is the first hearing I've been in where a whole party just didn't show up. So I'm sort of last in line, I think, of saying, like, I think it's a shame that none of the gay members of the committee showed up.
So that's with the devil on one side.
Well, the devil was saying, tell the joke, it'll kill.
To top it all off, there's this photo from 2000 of Al Franken actually, again, groping Joy Behar on a red carpet. Now, maybe they thought it was funny, but it makes a lot of people uncomfortable, especially in light of the photo we saw with Leanne Tweeden. Looks repulsive. He doesn't even try to hide it. In 2 cases, he's literally posing for the camera. It makes you wonder, are there other photos Franken doing the same thing? Just to recap quickly, Franken is accused of groping and kissing a woman, accused of harassing another. He's made comments about drugging and raping at women and is also homophobic, clearly. Doesn't end there. Senator Al Franken is also a hypocrite when it comes to women speaking out about sexual abuse. Just take a look at some of his tweets. While we must address sexual harassment, reforming arbitration laws will ensure survivors can seek justice in court. Thanks to courageous people who have shared #MeToo stories, including Senator Heitkamp and Senator Arano and Senator Claire McCaskill and Senator Warren. Now, Franken also praised the women who exposed Harvey Weinstein. It's kind of hypocritical. Think about this for a second. Just 1 second tonight. That picture of Leanne Tweeden, just for 1 second, you see that got released today. Imagine it was showing a Republican. Imagine the president, Trump, was in that picture. How would the media act on that issue tonight? They would be apoplectic. It would be the biggest news story of the year. They'd be breathlessly condemning the incident, demanding that person resign immediately, not just calling for an ethics committee hearing. Tonight, Senator Al Franken, well, he should be ashamed, as he said he is, because it is repulsive. Leanne Tweeden is asleep. We have to ask again, is Senator Franklin fit for office? Now, Senator Franken clearly is a pretty sick, twisted individual with a warped sense of humor in his own mind that really isn't funny, but his actions do need to be evaluated. At the end of the day, it will be the people in his home state that decide. And what's really shocking, what's really outrageous, is that Senator Franken is not alone when it comes to accusations of sexual misconduct against members of Congress. According to a new office compliance numbers that were released today, since 1997, 15 million of your taxpayer dollars have been used to settle allegations of sexual misconduct, discrimination, and other cases against members of Congress. Why don't they pay themselves? In other words, you're subsidizing their behavior. And for years, it's been kept secret, even though there have been 264 cases settled. Now, there are also reports about what's being called the Capitol Hill creep list, which helps warn people about which members of Congress and congressional employees to avoid. And finally tonight, a quick update on the Clintons' day of reckoning. For years, we have been shedding a light on the allegations of sexual misconduct by Bill Clinton and how Hillary smeared all of those accusers, and all of their friends did. They smeared, slandered, besmirched. We went into it in great detail last night in our opening monologue. We broke it down in all its detail. We encourage you, if you didn't see it, go back. You may want to see it. So now, after nearly 30 years of covering for Bill Clinton, now the media is finally realizing, oh, wait a second. Bill Clinton, we kind of enabled him. He is a sexual predator. Take a look at some of these headlines. One from Vox. It says, Bill Clinton should have resigned. What he did to Monica Lewinsky was wrong and should have paid the price. The New York Times even says, what about Bill Clinton? What about Bill's sexual misconduct debate? Revised questions about Clinton. We have to ask, what took everyone in the liberal mainstream media so long? Is it because they are Democrats and they like their policies? It's time they all come forward. They enabled that abusive, predatory behavior for decades. And by the way, as a result, many women suffered. We have a lot more to come tonight. Coming up, reaction to this monologue. Also, we have some on the left turning on the Clintons. And later, fake news CNN. You are not going to believe what they have done. They have so outdone themselves. I'll explain this incredibly idiotic story that they call news. You don't want to miss this tape. Straight ahead.
I want to say one thing to the American people. I want you to listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
That was President Bill Clinton's infamous lie about his relationship with Monica Lewinsky. For years, we have been shining a light on the allegations of sexual misconduct by President Clinton. And again, liberals have given him a pass for nearly 30 years. The women that have been involved, smeared, slandered, besmirched, thrown down the stairs, bimbo eruptions. We have left-wing comedian Chelsea Handler actually tweeted an apology last night to Juanita Broderick for not knowing her story. Handler's tweet read in part, quote, "You're right. I apologize to you for not knowing your story." Democrats, along with Republicans and the rest of the world's political parties, all need to do a better and respect at first-hand accounts of victims. I believe you. Joining us with reaction to my opening monologue and more, Fox News contributors Tommy Lahren, Jessica Turlove. You know, here's a guy, I call him Senator Grope. I mean, he's grabbing a sleeping woman's breast. This isn't an allegation. It's not a he said, she said. We have the evidence.
Absolutely. We do have the evidence. Irrefutable, as you said in your opening monologue as well. Democrats have been swift to condemn it. I actually haven't seen anyone defend it, including Senator Franken himself, and he even called for an investigation into his own actions. I think he acted pretty responsibly considering the irresponsible actions that set this all off. And most importantly, we need to consider the fact that we are officially in the territory of no partisan affiliation with this. We've got gross guys on both sides of the aisle, and we shouldn't be making any arguments on the basis of who we'd like to see in office.
You know, it's interesting because in the case of the Roy Moore situation, I said the same thing. If true, it's despicable. If true, it's disgusting. I did a hard interview with him. A lot of people, you know, praised me for the interview. And I said, you've got to answer these questions. At the end of the day, it's going to be the people of Minnesota and the people of Alabama.
I think where the real difference is here, where you look at what Al Franken and how he's responded, and you look at a Roy Moore, you even look at what happened when Donald Trump was accused of sexual assault. There has been no remorse.
By the way, in the case of Donald Trump, I interviewed most of those women the New York Times put in there. They all said it was false. One after another.
They all said I accused him of this, and I take it back.
No,
it never happened.
They came on this program. Go back and look at that article. I brought many of them on this show, and they all said they were taken out of context purposely by the New York Times.
Okay, well, I know that Summer Zavros is still moving forward with this. Either way, there is a proper way to deal with these allegations, whether you think that they're true or they're not.
Would it be different if that was Donald Trump, that picture?
Well, he would still be president. People heard the Access Hollywood tape, and you said in your opening monologue, what would the media be doing if this was
Donald Trump?
The media went crazy when it was Donald Trump, and they are going crazy when it's Al Franken.
Didn't the media and liberals in this country protect the Clintons for 30 years?
I mean, I haven't been alive and commentating that long. It would appear that way, yes. And there are a lot of
more than it appears. They did.
No, but this is also being led by a younger generation. I think that point is important. That Chris Hayes and Matt Iglesias.
By the way, I gave him credit last night.
And I think that that's important. There are people who did not grow up with the Clintons. They were not paying attention when he was in office.
We know they got a pass even in 2016.
They got a pass. She's lost 2 elections.
Well, no. We got a pass because she took money from countries that abuse women, killed gays and lesbians, persecuted Christians and Jews, and nobody wanted to hear when that second debate happened, and Juanita and Paula and Kathleen were there, Tommy.
Well, and this goes beyond Bill Clinton. It goes to Hillary as well. And I know that the liberals hate it when we still talk about Hillary, but it's important if we go all the way back to Bill and then we follow it through Hillary. She just ran for president on the whole woman card, the whole female empowerment. Hillary is just as responsible as Bill was. As you mentioned, the bimbo eruption squads.
Tommy, if Bill Clinton raped Juanita Broaddrick, I don't know how you can say that Hillary Clinton is just as responsible as Bill Clinton. Think about what you're saying here. I understand you want to say she enabled.
Jessica, wouldn't that make her an enabler? If you have a bimbo eruption squad and you work to blackmail and discredit the accusers, are you not also responsible?
No. There is responsibility and then there is raping someone. They are completely different. You are conflating two very separate things, and I don't think that anyone
I just got some breaking news. Senator Kristen Gillibrand of New York is now saying Bill Clinton should have resigned over the Lewinsky affair. Yeah. And here's the point that I made last night. I think you know more about the Clintons. You know Doug Schoen very well.
I do.
But the reality is you have Kathleen Willey. I took the time and I went and interviewed them. I had the second interview that Juanita gave, first to Lisa Myers, then me. And nobody wanted to pay attention in the media. In this campaign, it was brought up. Hillary just, it's old news. Is it really when you say you're the women's champion in the world, you take money from countries that abuse women? She's never said that. She said women have a right to be believed, but she never commented on the women that accused her husband.
Well, I think
is that hypocritical on her part?
Yes, it is, and she suffered for it. I mean, if you look at the female turnout for her, if you look at even what happened in the Democratic primaries, where Bernie Sanders won 18 to 29-year-olds, and I believe in 80% of the contest by a 6-to-1 ratio, you know that she was hurt by her brand of feminism, and that a lot of things that she was saying did not ring true to people. Again, I'm going back to what Tommy just said. It's really a separate issue to have been the wife of someone who's accused of rape and to have actually raped someone. I think that Clintons were certainly protected by liberals.
You never saw an interview with Juanita Broaddrick?
I did, actually. I did on the network last week.
Did you believe her?
It's certainly a compelling story. I've read a lot of accounts of this. I've read what Ken Starr said about
Kathleen Willey?
If you believe that every woman has a right to believe.
Jennifer Flowers was thrown down the stairs on 60 Minutes in '92, and it turned out Bill Clinton under oath had to admit he had an affair with Jennifer Flowers.
Yes, I mean, he obviously had an affair with these women. I understand how serious these accusations are. If we are going to be the party of women's rights and our champions,
but Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, and Juanita were not. That was not consensual. All three of them. All right, Tommy, let's bring you in.
Well, of course it wasn't consensual. And now look at this stuff. When we go back and we look at it, you have to set a precedent. And the precedent was Bill. And everyone wanted to look the other way when it was Bill. And then all of a sudden, when the Republicans, now the light's being shown on them, of course, we're still talking about Donald Trump. We're talking about an Access Hollywood tape. Meanwhile, we have disgusting pictures right in front of us. Why we're still going back to Donald Trump, I don't understand. When we should be talking about the precedent setter, which was Bill Clinton, which was Hillary Clinton. I'm still going to stick to that. Hillary was a part of this.
Well, actually,
she covered up for Bill. The mainstream media covered up for them.
Tommy,
both,
if you're going by a timeline, I believe Roy Moore was allegedly assaulting 14-year-olds before Bill Clinton was doing anything. So what about that? You just want to focus on Al Franken. This is a society-wide problem.
Tommy, I'll give you a chance to answer. Go ahead.
We didn't know about Roy Moore until 2 weeks ago. It might have happened long ago, but how long have we known about Bill? How long have we known this? And how long has the mainstream media shielded him, shielded Hillary, still said, I'm with her, female empowerment, first female president? I'm sorry, I didn't want that as my first female president, someone that had a bimbo eruption squad and worked to discredit Bill's accusers. I'm not with her, but still you stood by her. You were with her. Where were you? Where were the feminists, Jessica? Where were you?
They were sitting right here in this chair. They were sitting all over the country supporting a woman who is advocating an agenda that would have made women's lives in this country better by raising the minimum wage, by getting quality, affordable health care. I totally take your points, but be responsible.
I got to jump in. She took money from countries where women are told how to dress.
It's like the State Department.
Excuse me. She took millions of dollars from countries for her foundation that abuse women. Women are told how to dress. They can't travel without a male permission. They can't vote in some of these countries. Marital rape is legal in some of these countries. Domestic abuse is legal in some of these countries. She took millions from those countries. Jessica, I think I know you wouldn't take a dime from people that have those beliefs, would you?
Well, I don't work in that kind of business.
I didn't ask you. If you had the chance, would you take a penny?
You're also talking about when she was in the State Department. If
no,
you read
I'm talking talking about for the Clinton, no. For the Clinton Foundation.
Which was her husband's foundation when that money was taken.
Excuse me, would you take money from countries that abuse women, kill gays and lesbians for who they are, and persecute Christians and Jews? Would you?
No, there are better countries to take money from. But
go.
Donald Trump has businesses operating in those countries as well as Jared Kushner.
It's amazing how we're always back to Donald Trump. We really cannot stay on the Clintons. We can't talk about Hillary because it always goes back to Trump. Well, he has businesses where he's a businessman.
It's the only thing you talk about, Tommy.
Hillary,
if you give up Hillary Clinton, I'll give up.
There's a silver lining in all of this is that the young women on either side of the political divide will find the courage to speak up and not wait 20 years. I think that moving forward, that's going to be the best solution.
Jessica. We'll try that for the segment.
Let me ask you both a really tough question. We have about 20 seconds each. It's tough, though. Tommy, I'll start with you. What do you do in these cases when it's he said, she said, and then it becomes he said versus she said, she said, she said? How do people, because I think it's important that people know truth, how do you get to the truth?
There's a silver lining in all of this is that the young women on either side of the political divide will find the courage to speak up and not wait 20 years. I think that moving forward, that's going to be the best solution. So if you have an issue of a problem, someone touched you, you didn't want to be touched, say something as it's happening because we're in a climate right now where you have the opportunity to stand up. And so I would hope that women across the board would be able and be empowered enough to do that at this point.
20 seconds.
I agree with that. Women in this country are having a moment, and I think it's incredibly important. Suddenly people are interested in hearing their stories. And I would also add that there are a lot of industries that are not being paid attention to. We happen to work in media, and media and politics is shiny and bright, and people will pay attention to that.
But there are the music industry.
Absolutely. There are countless people who are working in fast food restaurants who are getting harassed every day, who are, working in homes and not being treated properly. So speak up and use whatever platform you can.
Thank you both for being with us. Appreciate
it.
Thanks
a lot,
Thank
Sean.
you, Tommy. All right, when we come back, Hillary Clinton is feeling the heat. She is lashing out at the possibility. We have breaking news tonight. A special counsel to investigate her corrupt Uranium One deal. Sebastian Gorka, Peter Schweitzer are here. Also later, we'll show you the most insane fake news report from CNN in their history. And that says a lot. Straight ahead.
This Uranium One story has been debunked countless times. It is nothing but a false charge that the Trump administration is trying to drum up in order to avoid attention being directed at them. This is such an abuse of power, and it goes right at the rule of law. If they send a signal that we're going to be like some dictatorship, some authoritarian regime where political opponents are going to be unfairly, fraudulently investigated, that rips at the fabric of the contract we have that we can trust our justice system.
Really? Hillary talking about the rule of law and the possibility of a special counsel to investigate her role in that whole corrupt Uranium One deal? She's obviously getting nervous. Here with more reaction, author of the best-selling book, Clinton Cash. Really? We're going to get a lecture on the rule of law? I watch people now assail you. Even the Never Trump crowd is now trying to come to the defense, I noticed, of Hillary Clinton. I want to give you a chance to respond and explain to people all of the connections here. I'll hand it to you.
Well, thanks, Sean. This is a story that begins in 2005. Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton helped Frank Giustra, a Canadian investor, get very, very rich uranium deposits in Kazakhstan from the Kazakh government. And we now have a video deposition from the Kazakh uranium minister at the time going into detail about how they were extorted by then-Senator Hillary Clinton to grant those concessions to Frank Giustra. She was on the Armed Services Committee. She would not meet with Kazakh officials. Her committee had responsibility for the distribution of funds that were supposed to go to Kazakhstan. She made it clear, no uranium for Giustra. You are not going to get your support from the federal government. After Giustra got those uranium deposits, he sent $30 million to the Clinton Foundation.
What is the timeline on that?
Yeah, so that's 2005 is when that deal happens. Within 2 months, he sends the first $30 million to the Clinton Foundation. 2007, they do what's called a reverse merger. They take those Kazakh assets, they put them in a company called Uranium One. Uranium One acquires uranium assets in the United States. In 2010, the Russian government says, we want to buy Uranium One. That triggers the federal approval of the United States. As the U.S. federal government and the State Department is considering that deal, the chairman of Uranium One, Ian Telfer, sends $2.35 million to the Clinton Foundation through a private foundation. It was never disclosed. It was only discovered by going through Canadian tax records. Bill Clinton gives a $500,000 speech the month as that approval is going through to a company in Russia that is involved financially with Uranium One. The ties and the deals go on. And let me just add, Sean, by the way, it's about to get a lot more interesting because we know some details about this lobbyist, this source that's come forward. His name is William Campbell. He lives in Florida. He was with Cassidy and Associates, which is one of the big lobbying firms in D.C., where he lobbied on Russian interests from 2007 to 2008. He then started his own firm, was paid $50,000 a month by the Russians for lobbying. And this is what his contract was for, quote, to improve the media and political environment in the U.S. in respect to the surprise of the Russian uranium products, and, quote, to set up meetings with U.S. administration officials, members of Congress, and other key opinion elite in 10X and Russian government officials. So this is a very inside guy that's coming forward as this whistleblower.
Russia, we had Putin bad actors in the United States. Mueller was the FBI director. Eric Holder was one of the 9 that signed off on the deal, CFIUS deal, the committee. Then you've got bribery, extortion, kickbacks, money laundering, and racketeering. Mueller had to know because they had an FBI informant. He had his own personal experience, ended up 4 years being an informant. Then you got tapes, and then we've got documents, and we got emails and a first-hand account. And Putin was breaking all of these laws to get a foothold in the uranium market. And they knew in 2009.
You're right, Sean. In fact, the purchase of Uranium One was announced by Vladimir Putin himself. It was reported in the Moscow Times, which is an English language publication in Moscow. He personally released the funds to purchase Uranium One in the United States. And look, the argument that the Clinton defenders use is, well, there were all these government agencies that were involved in this process. She didn't do it by herself. From the standpoint of bribery, that is irrelevant. If you're a congressman sitting on a committee and a committee votes unanimously for something, but you got paid to vote for that, it doesn't matter what your colleagues did. You committed bribery, and that's why this needs to be investigated.
All right, Peter, we're going to stay on this. And by the way, the FBI informant I was just talking about, his name was revealed today. We have John Solomon, Sarah Carter coming. Thank you, Peter. Here now with reaction to all of that, Fox News national security strategist, former deputy assistant to the president, Dr. Sebastian Gorka. Dr. Gorka, let you respond to that. We have to import uranium into this country. And yet Putin we knew all these things were happening, all these crimes committed. He built a network in the United States. Why anybody would ever allow a foreign entity to have any interest in uranium when we need more and we have to import it never made sense, did it?
Not at all. Not only do we need it, there is legislation that is active today that says America should be absolutely self-sufficient on uranium. It is such a strategic asset that we must not rely upon anybody else. And Hillary Clinton, as the chairman of that committee, approved this deal. The question is, how far up the chain does this go? Does it go up to President Obama as well? And if you look at the statements coming out of Hillary in the last 48 hours, to quote the good bard, the lady doth protest too much. The heat is on, and finally we have a chance. I know Fox viewers have been very, very cynical that these people are Teflon coated and they never pay the price for their crimes, but it seems as if finally, under a Trump administration, this rampant criminal cartel, which goes by the name of Clinton, will finally see some form of justice in the near future.
Let me dovetail into the issue of Senator Grope, Al Franken, and that disgusting picture. Your thoughts?
There's this, somebody said to me tonight, poor Judge Moore, all he has to do is change ticket and become a Democrat, because then he'd be Teflon coated as well. At the end of the day, the fact that the left seems to have double standards on these issues. It's only Republicans that get in trouble for these kinds of behaviors. These are all inexcusable. Any kind of sexual act of this nature, whether it's an assault or whether it's something that simply shames a woman afterwards, taking photographs while they're asleep of a sexual nature. Al Franken, I want to see not just the GOP, I don't just want to see the rhinos, I want to see the Democrat senators call for Al Franken's removal, resignation, and recall.
When you talk about a double standard, all the years Democrats have bent over backwards, they have thread every needle, they have skated every razor's edge so they could defend the Clintons. And there was, in this sense, we knew there was collusion. Well, Hillary stole the primary from Bernie, but we knew that there was media collusion to help Hillary win. And that was proven in no uncertain terms via WikiLeaks. And you watch all of this, but here we are 30 years later, and they did it all the way up and through and until last year's election. And we have to wonder, how do they hold the mantle in their minds when it's not accurate that they're for women's rights, gay and lesbian rights, and freedom of religion? And she takes money from those other countries. You haven't heard a word from Hillary today. You had a whole hit squad to go out there, bimbo eruptions, smearing all those women that did speak out. Your thoughts?
They preach one thing and they do the opposite. Well, the Democrats are supposed to be the party of sexual equality, of trans rights, of protecting the victim. And what do we find? Exactly the opposite. It's a good rule of thumb. When they accuse somebody else of doing something, they're probably doing it themselves. But the interesting thing, Sean, look at that article in the New York Times just 2 days ago, calling Bill Clinton out for his being a sexual predator. It looks as if Hillary and Bill are past their sell-by date. They're no longer relevant to the DNC, and they're going to be thrown under the bus. It took 30 years, but it might be happening.
Dr. Gorka, thank you for being with us. When we come back, you've heard about this FBI informant. The news media has now outed him. John Solomon, Sarah Carter are next. And also tonight, you will see one of the most ridiculous reports on fake news, CNN. You don't want to miss this. Straight ahead. Welcome back to Hannity. So as we reported last night, the Hill's John Solomon out with another huge, massive bombshell story on the FBI's investigation into Hillary Clinton's private email server. According to this report, Deputy FBI Director Andrew McCabe, he issued an email declaring that the Clinton investigation has been given a, quote, special status and would be handled by a small team of high-ranking FBI officials. And there's more tonight on the Russian bribery case. Reuters now has released the name of the FBI informant, the one that had the NDA lifted. John is also reporting that tonight the Democratic senator from the state of California, Dianne Feinstein, wants to speak with him. Joining us now, the Hill's John Solomon, along with investigative reporter Sarah Carter. I don't even know where to begin. The fact that this informant's name was released, that's troublesome to me. But more troublesome, I'll let you both address this, John, first. More troublesome is the fact that their Justice Department is leaking, oh, he doesn't have any information, when I know that's a lie.
Yeah, no, you're right, Sean. We have seen the Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, tried to say there's no connection between Uranium One and the Mikoyan Russian bribery case. We've seen the Deputy Attorney General say that. And now we saw two anonymous officials in a Reuters story saying that. And what we'll say back to that is I think people should tune into the Hill next week. We'll show people the real FBI documents, what the FBI learned in real time about the Russian bribery case and its connection to Uranium One. There'll be no doubt about it when we put those documents into the public domain.
I've said to you, you guys are going to be Woodward and Bernstein by the time this is all over. And Sarah, let me get your take on this. You know who the FBI informant is. You both know. You have both talked to him. We know who the attorney is. How extensive? They're trying to downplay what he has. Sarah, how extensive is it? And what do you think of the release of his name?
Well, I know he's very concerned about the release of his name. He did not authorize that, although he was contacted by the reporter from Reuters. I spoke to him and asked him, what would you want me to say? And this was through his attorney when I speak to Sean tonight. And one of the things that he'd like to get out there is, at the time that the reporter contacted him, he's been terribly ill. He's been battling cancer. He's been in a battle not only with the U.S. government, but he is very sick, and he's been battling cancer and going through chemo. And, all of these now are coming out. So he is in a battle for not only his life, but in a battle against what he perceives as people within the U.S. government that don't want the story to come out. But there is so much information, Sean, that he is willing to share with the public to set the record straight. And believe me, we're going to get it out there. He is going to have his say. His voice will be heard.
4 years an informant. He knew about the bribery, extortion, kickbacks, money laundering of Putin's agents, if you will, in the U.S.?
Yes. And he will be able to lay that all out for everyone, and he will do that for Congress, and specifically for Congress. And I know, John and I have been working on this for months and months and months. Another clarification in the story, they called him a lobbyist. He was not a lobbyist. He was a consultant, which was very different. And remember, he was the one that came to the U.S. government. He came to the Justice Department with this information.
I'm guessing, John, at the end of this FBI informant is going to end up being the hero.
Yeah, I don't know whether hero, that's other people's decisions to put white hats and black hats on people, but he is going to be an extraordinary fact witness because he gathered so much information. There are videotapes where the Russians are opening up briefcases full of cash. These are the people that we then gave uranium to, that we then gave nuclear fuel contracts to. When people see these videotapes.
All this is happening before they sign off on uranium.
That's right.
They knew about bribery, extortion, kickbacks, money laundering before. They knew this was Putin. They did it anyway. The Russians must think we are really dumb.
That's funny that you would say that, Sean, because there was a conversation that the informant attended where they actually said that about Americans, and we'll be reporting on that soon. But the Russians really thought they had played America on this one.
Wow. All right. We will get to the bottom of this. Let me go back to this story about McCabe. We had the tarmac meeting. We had, Sarah, it's not an investigation, it's a matter. We had the exoneration letters written beforehand. Now Andrew McCabe had given a special status. Is that equal justice under the law, Sarah? Special status? Do I get special status when they're investigating me?
No, we don't. And according to FBI law enforcement officials who were involved in the investigation, that is something that they were so concerned about. A lot of these FBI agents had reported this, and they are reporting this. So this is something that's very important. There was no special status for other people, but there was special status for Hillary Clinton. And we can see progressively by all the evidence what former Director James Comey did and how he changed things. Gross negligence was removed. So these are a lot of issues that I think Congress as well as the DOJ is looking into. Remember, there is an Inspector General's investigation. So we will see where this will lead. But I can tell you this, Sean, there are FBI agents out there that truly believed there was no equal justice here.
Thank God for those good few. John, don't think you slipped it past me with me not catching it, that you talked about next week and you talked about Monday, and don't think you're getting off this show without me asking you specifically where you're going with this next step, because this is unpeeling the layers of an onion, and I think when we get to the core, it's going to be pretty rotten.
Yeah, listen, there are now allegations in the public that this guy didn't have anything to do with Uranium One reporting, and we're going to be able to show that that's simply not true. And you have to ask yourself
Reuters was wrong
why
today. That the Justice Department leak was wrong?
Well, what the lawyers are quoted as saying, that they don't think there's any connection to Uranium One and the Meekerin case. We have seen documentation that absolutely refutes that.
Sarah?
Absolutely. It absolutely refutes that. So stay tuned.
Let me go back to the Russian dossier. Sarah, I'll stick with you on this because this is another matter. We went over the email servers. I think that will still come back into play. But on the Russian dossier, we know that Hillary bought and paid for this with Michael Steele, and we know that it was false, and we know it was salacious, and yet they ran with it to influence an election. Here's my question. If they're looking at Trump-Russia collusion and they have nothing, even the Manafort indictment is nothing related to this, and you've got Hillary paying a guy that's getting lies from Russia. Why is that not investigated by Robert Mueller? Sarah?
Who knows? I mean, I don't know. Maybe he is. We would hope that he would be. I mean, this is expansive investigation, right? He went way beyond the realm of what we thought he would be investigating when he wrapped up Paul Manafort and the others into and gave them, and handed out the indictments. So we just don't know. I don't want to make any assumptions there, but we do know. What we do know is that the Judiciary Committee, other committees are looking at this very closely. We know that Glenn Simpson, who is the owner of Fusion GPS, testified and also talked about spreading this dossier.
But what about Sessions? What about Sessions' testimony this week about a special counsel and reaching the standard?
Well, I can only hope that Sessions stands by his word, that the Attorney General stands by his word, and that he moves forward with that.
All right, guys, we're looking forward to that report on Monday. Thank you both for being with us. You are going to see the most insane, ridiculous fake news by liberal CNN. You don't want to miss it next. All right, welcome back to Hannity. Before we go tonight, we wanted to share something with you. On this show, we've repeatedly exposed fake news, liberal CNN's ridiculous coverage of President Trump. Tuesday night, they put out one of their dumbest reports yet. Anchor Aaron Burnett actually aired a segment about how the inside of a dog's ear looks like President Trump's face. Wow, this is CNN. Watch.
We like seeing things. Jesus in a Cheeto, the Virgin Mary in a grilled cheese. A question mark on a cow.
So does she have any other punctuation marks on her?
But if you think you've had an earful of Donald Trump, check out what's in the ear of a beagle in Britain named Chief. Brace yourself. Some howled with laughter.
It's a spitting image, isn't it?
Others found it violently upsetting. Owner Jade Robinson was taking photos of her beagle's ears to give to the vet because Chief had an ear infection. A friend first noticed the resemblance.
And she was like, no, there's something in the ear. She was like, it's Donald Trump.
Jade posted the photo to Facebook. Chief went viral.
You can't make this up. Now, what's worse, that report or when this is CNN reported that President Trump likes 2 scoops of ice cream and only gives his guests 1? You decide. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have left this evening. This show is not the mainstream left-wing, biased, destroyed Trump media. We are fair and balanced. Thanks for being with us. Laura Ingraham, are you going to deal